When we think about school culture, something that we often talk about on the Contagious Culture podcast, we often talk about test scores, leadership, and curriculum. But what if the very walls around us, the classrooms, the hallways, the shared spaces, the boardrooms, are quietly shaping student identity, motivation, and belonging every single day? Today's guest, Dr. Jones, somebody I am so excited for you all to learn from, has spent nearly 3 decades proving that our environments don't just house learning, they drive it. Welcome to another episode of the Contagious Culture Podcast. My name is Kyle King. I'm your host, and the goal of this podcast is to help you create an ecosystem of academic excellence. Through inspiring conversations, practical strategies, and actionable insights, we help educators, leaders, and change makers just like yourself foster trust, collaboration, and provide them the tools, the methodologies, the strategies to ultimately create an ecosystem of academic excellence. I hope you're as excited as this guest as I am. Let's introduce Dr. Jones. How you doing?
Doing great, Kyle. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. Before we get started, I just need to know, how have you lasted in education for so long and continue to have the passion to be able to change lives?
Oh, wow. That's an awesome question. I think what I have done or how I've lasted is I have continued to reinvent myself
Mm,
to find the passion and rekindle it.
mm,
So when I've been able to sense in myself that I need a shift or I need a change, I've done the work to make that change. So when I was in the classroom and I thought this is not sustainable, I need to figure something else out. And, being a Walmart greeter or working in the department store was not the option for
Ain't it?
me because I knew I still had so much to give and wanted to share. I figured out what that thing was, and it ended up being working in nonprofit education,
Mm.
working with organizations that still work with schools and students. And even within that realm, I've been able to have different roles that have allowed me to do different things and to just continue to rekindle that passion.
Before we get into like the actual work that you do, who are you? How would you define who you are, especially in all of the reinvention seasons that you've went through?
I would define myself. I am I'm always a teacher, always have been. But I have known for quite some time that my purpose as an educator has been to cultivate leadership in others, whether that is educationally, whether that is on nonprofit boards that I may have been on, whether that's in my church life.
Mhm.
Um, that's how I would define myself as really a leadership cultivator.
And you've had nearly 30 years of leadership cultivating across K-12 education, higher education, nonprofit space. I guess what first sparked that passion for being able to do this work, but then also linking physical spaces to school culture?
I I fell in love with school in third grade. I've always loved school. My mother decided to go back to school to finish her bachelor's degree, and there were times that I went to class with her. And you couldn't tell me as an 8, 9-year-old kid that I wasn't in college myself.
Talk about it.
And that is really where I fell in love with school. And then as a junior in high school, I fell in love with teaching. We had a teacher cadet program. I grew up in Columbia, South Carolina.
Okay.
We had a teacher cadet program, and that was where I bit the teaching bug.
Mm.
So it's been instilled in me. I actually come from a family of educators. My mother worked at a college, even though she wasn't a professor. She worked on a college campus for literally 50 years. So I grew up on a college campus essentially. So education is just in the blood. It always has been.
Look, if you're anywhere for 50 years, it's in your blood. It's in your DNA. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. When you think about, and I really want to get into if walls could talk framework. Like I've read on it, I've researched it, and it's phenomenal the work that you're doing. I guess the question before we really dive deeper into it is like, what is the gap that you saw in education and in the educational landscape to even create if walls could talk framework?
I have been in the course of my career, I have been in definitely hundreds, maybe thousands of schools across the US. And being in those places and seeing the variability
Mm-hmm.
in the physical environments that students and staff are learning and working in really started me to thinking about how is this influencing whether I want to learn from you, whether I want to work here, whether I want to be here.
Mm-hmm.
And the one of the gaps that I continue to find is that people think about the physical environment typically when something is broken. HVAC isn't working, water is out, something is falling apart. But that's such a reactive stance
Mm-hmm.
to the environment and how it can impact learning and culture and outcomes that we have to have a more proactive stance. And just being in some of the schools and thinking, no wonder kids aren't coming. No wonder they aren't learning. And really wanting to help schools realize that they are overlooking a significant factor in the outcomes they're seeking for not just the students, but the adults as well.
That's such an interesting perspective. And I think, why I'm even so interested in having this conversation with you today, because I think about it in my own life and personally, if I'm being vulnerable. Prior to me studying scripture, I have to like create an environment for me to be able to receive the word. Like I can't just come home after a hard day and just throw the Bible on the bed and then I'm just ready. I like to drink tea, potentially light a candle sometimes. I'll have worship music on. I like to do the lamp instead of like the main light. And I create an environment for me to be able to receive from him so that I can be able to actually learn what I'm actually reading in this moment. And interestingly, I'm the culture guy, and I've never thought of creating that connection to students as well in the classroom. Can you share a story where a small change in a school's physical space made a big difference in how students and staff even interacted, or some of those outcomes as well?
Ooh, sure. So I have worked with a school. It's a middle school here in Georgia, and we initially did a walkthrough. What what messages? I know you talk about storytelling in your work. What story is your building
Yeah.
telling? And when we think about the square footage of one school, how much wall space we have, how much just real estate there is to work with, uh, I, as I was working with that principal, I said, the kids don't see themselves.
Mm.
Where are they? How do we know that they actually are here? And so we went through a series of taking just a series of photos of kids working, playing, eating, just engage with teachers. And we installed those photos in the hallway as students got off the bus.
I can see
The
those.
main hallway they walked into had photos of them in the building, engaged in learning and building together. And just the I told him, I said, I've got to be there when they see the pictures.
Mm.
And just to see them saying, hey, that's so and so. Hey, when did we get this? And just the joy.
Mm,
of them being seen was really a game changer. And I don't think the principal realized how much it would matter to the children until he saw them walking down that hallway.
mm. There's a this reminds me of when I was at a conference years ago, and the gentleman that was speaking on stage turned his phone around during the end of his speech, and he took a selfie of the whole audience, and he said that in a few seconds I'm going to send you all this picture. And he said, if you were to receive that picture, you would probably be looking to find where you are in the picture first. And that in schools, students are trying to find where they are in your classrooms and where they are in these physical spaces to feel seen, respected, and valued. And how are we representing students in this work on a daily basis? How do you, Dr. Jones, help leaders recognize the power of these hidden messages in their building and what that's sending to students and staff every day?
It's amazing to me how what a blind spot it is
Hmm.
for many leaders in thinking about their physical environment. Going back to what I said about, if things are broken or not working or I don't have enough seats, all of those things are important.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that I have found in working with leaders is that I have to create a sense of awareness for them
Mm-hmm.
to say, let me show you why this is so important. Usually, once I show them or make that case, they are usually, wow, I never thought about it in that way before. And then just getting them to see, and then also that awareness or that education that it's not always about the big dollars or a huge renovation. These little tweaks. We took some photos with a camera phone, a phone on a camera, and had them enlarged, put them up in the school building. That cost less than $100. And so in working with leaders, that first step is really awareness of getting them to see how just subtle changes can make a huge difference in the culture. But once that light bulb gets turned on, then they're usually on board and just really eager to see what else they can do to impact the culture.
For leaders that are listening right now to what you even just said, like what's one thing that they can do tomorrow to begin this work?
I always start with a walkthrough. Walk through your building. Start in the front of the building. Start at any entry point
Mm-hmm.
that someone can walk into your building. And most of our schools now, of course, have security foyers.
Mm-hmm.
And what's the first thing someone sees when they walk up to your building, when they drive into your parking lot? So I always encourage leaders to start with a walkthrough. We're not talking about the usual walkthroughs that we do as education leaders. We're looking through the lens of the physical building and what stories are being told, what messages are being sent. Are the walls blank? Do they have color? Do we see student work reflected? Are teachers recognized? What do our communal spaces look like? If I walk into your school, do I know what you value? So, really, that first step is a walkthrough to understand and get a lay of the land, literally, of what messages are being conveyed. And if there are none, why? And what messages do I want to convey?
What values do our walls reflect while walking through our building? That is a perspective that I've never heard, but is so valuable. It's like, what are the stories? What are the hidden messages? I've worked with a charter school based in North Carolina, and they believed in white walls throughout the whole school. And it's interesting because the students were never bought into the vision, to the values, to the overall school culture because there was a disconnect. There was no connectivity. There was no featuring of students' work, or even are the values reflected or teachers celebrated. And I think it's those small, subtle things that we can place throughout our school buildings or in our classrooms that say, hey, we have a standard of excellence. These are our values, but we're going to celebrate you. And this is what we actually expect from you on a day-to-day basis. That's amazing work. I think for listeners that are listening right now, can you talk about if Walls Can Talk framework and how we can begin to implement this on a day-to-day basis?
Absolutely. So the If Walls Could Talk framework is really a four-part framework. Often when I'm talking with people about the physical environment of the school building and how it contributes to climate and culture and student outcomes, the first thought is the classroom. And of course, that's the central hub of learning in schools is classrooms. However, there are multiple aspects that we should be thinking about, and that's where the If Walls Can Talk framework comes in. So the first aspect of that framework is about structure. What's the structure of the building? Your maintenance, your safety, all of the big components that we think of when we're thinking about a building's structure. The next part of that framework is about symbolism. Is it symbolic? What messages, what values are being conveyed in the building, such as our mascot, our motto, colors? What colors is there a theme? Is there a clear brand that is being communicated in the building? That third element of the framework is the communal spaces. Our media center is kind of a hybrid of a communal and an instructional space. But our cafeterias, our parent centers, our gymnasium, auditorium, how do we, or where are the spaces where we commune, where we convene as a school community? Is your teacher professional learning room or those rooms where teachers come together for collaboration, does it double as a supply closet? Those are the types of things we're thinking about with those communal spaces. And then, of course, the instructional spaces. What does the classroom look like? Are there zones of learning? What is the lighting like? Are we just in rows? Do we have small groupings? Those are some of the aspects of the instructional portion of the framework. So it's a four-part framework, really simple, but so much packed into each component.
Do you have a recommendation if I'm a leader listening right now on where to start, or does that depend on budget? Does that depend on a lot of other factors? Or you're saying, hey, here's the four, kind of start where you feel is best?
I think the walkthrough is where you learn the most about where to start because that gives you the sense of what we're doing well, what's missing. I know that's a question that you ask often as well. What's thriving, what's going well, what's missing. And that will help to identify where we start. So if you're doing a walkthrough and you notice, I just did a walkthrough with a principal recently, and they have a mascot, and there were probably 5 different versions of that mascot throughout the school building.
Yeah,
And
that's not
she said, how many of these are we going to have? We have to have a clear identity. And so if that's someplace you want to start thinking about what's our brand identity as a school, that will give you a level of cohesion because if you have 50 teachers in your building, how many email signatures do you have?
it's the
Do
little
you have 25?
thing.
50?
Exactly.
Three, you know? And so there are really, that's one of the things I love about the framework is that there's so many entry points, regardless of budget, regardless of school size. But I think it really hinges on you getting a clear sense of your building and the surrounding facilities to be able to figure out where you can start.
How does your, quote me if I'm wrong, your school building culture analysis, how does your
Yes.
school building culture analysis work, and how can teachers and leaders get involved in that work at their campuses?
So the school building culture analysis is really where I employ the framework I've just talked about. School districts, school leaders reach out to me and say, I'm interested in doing this work. I want to learn more about my building. And so I say, let's figure out what your goals are. So I do an initial conversation with the school leadership. And then I say, let's schedule a walkthrough. And we walk the building together. And then I tell them after that walkthrough, we do a really in-depth walkthrough, a couple of hours, going into all the different spaces in the building. And then I ask them or share with them, actually, here are three things that I see, quick wins immediately. And then I take everything I've seen and the research that I've done beforehand and the initial conversation, and I craft a report for them based on the framework. Here's where I think you can leverage what you have,
Mhm.
quick wins, medium term, long term. Those longer term things are things that might require some school district intervention if it's a public school, or might need some board approval if we're in a charter school. And then one of the things I suggest, because there's a trap you can fall into in this work, one of the things that I suggest is let's sit together and create a plan
Mhm.
for how you're going to implement these recommendations. Because if you don't have that plan, then you have 10 different things going on. We want to do this and we want to do this, but
Exactly.
we haven't come together to create that coherence that we need. Because otherwise, then we are communicate. Then we have, 5 different versions of the mascot all over the building.
Or 25 different signature lines.
That part too.
Your upcoming book, it blends this leadership development, which I believe all leaders need, but with design thinking, school improvement, and it's a great intersection between multiple topics. Can you give us a preview of what we'll walk away with, when it's going to be out, and how we can get access to
Yes, thank you for asking that.
it?
So the book is called Beyond Bulletin Boards:
Hmm.
Actionable Strategies School Leaders Can Use to Improve the Physical Environment. And the book is, I'm a very practical person. I love the theory, I love the research, but in order for us to get where we want to be, there has to be a level of practicality there.
Good.
So the book is really a series of strategies based on the If Walls Could Talk framework that school leaders can implement to improve the building, to improve the physical environment. There'll also be some walkthrough tools or instruments available for them to use to do that walkthrough I was talking about, to get a sense of where they are and where they would like to improve. And then there's also some information about funding and different ways to find resources to fund some of the work that you would want to do to improve the building. So it'll be out next year,
Let's go.
middle of next year. So I'm really, really excited about it.
No, I'm excited too. Where do you think the future of school design and culture is heading over the next, I don't know, 5 to 10 years?
Like, I'm not sure. I wish I could answer that question. I I really would love to see school design done in conjunction with educators.
What does that look like?
That looks like focus groups interviews
Hmm.
with classroom teachers, talking with students. Imagine that, the end user,
Imagine that.
working with them to find out how learning best takes place.
Hmm.
I think it's also in conversation with teachers about what they need professionally
Yeah,
in a space in order to be able to work even more effectively because we're already working hard.
exactly.
So how do we work more effectively together? I think the more research and the more connections I make, I do see architectural firms or school construction firms, they are starting to talk more or actually bring people onto staff or on as consultants who have a background in education while they're in that school design mode. And so I think that community and that connection, not can I just design an amazing building because there are plenty of architects who can do that,
Exactly.
but can I design an amazing building or an amazing facility that is a tool for teaching, learning, and community? Because the culture, the contagious culture that you talk about, Kyle, is when we think about culture, the facility, the building
Mhm.
is the primary vessel.
I agree.
It's the container
Hmm.
for that culture. So I think I would love to see us get away from cinder block walls um, in education. It just so some of the schools. I had a principal say to me. I know I'm digressing a little bit, but I had a principal say to me, uh, I need you to help me make my school look like a place of learning and not an institution.
Yeah.
And I feel like so many of our schools are designed like places we're actually trying to keep them out of,
Mm.
like hospitals or prisons.
Prisons.
And so I'm hoping that the school design, the future of school design is much more forward thinking, has many more communal spaces and biophilic aspects of greenery and natural elements.
Yeah.
Um, that we start to incorporate more and more of those types of elements into a quote traditional school space.
For listeners inspired by your work, and I'm inspired by your work, and I talk about this all the time on the podcast. Like we think culture has to do with staff luncheons and all of these different things. Culture begins when I pull in the parking lot. And
Absolutely.
do I have enough signage to direct me to the front door? When I walk into the door, what is that immediate feeling when I walk in? Is there
Yes.
pamphlets about our school, or is there just two old chairs sitting there as I'm waiting to either check out my student or tour the school? When I walk through those doors, all of these various things, when I'm walking in the hallway, what am I seeing? Am I seeing gum on the floors or gum at the bottom of desk? Or when I walk into classrooms, am I greeted by a student and a teacher? Do I even feel welcomed? All of these things that I'm sure we could talk about for hours. I guess my
Yes.
question is, like, for people that are inspired by your work like I am, what's the best way to get started and to learn more to work with you?
Well, you can easily contact me. You could go to my website, which is milestoneeducationllc.com, and you'll see some of the school walkthrough work that I'm doing there and other leadership development work as well. And you are welcome to reach out to me through my website and reach out for more information. I'm happy to send. I have some, like I said, a couple of walkthrough tools that just those brief ones that just kind of get you started. You could also follow me on Instagram, which is Milestone EDU Consulting. And I have some challenges that I've put on. on Instagram, and you can also follow me on LinkedIn at Letishia Seabrook Jones, PhD here as well. And would love to talk with more and more leaders about getting this work front and center in schools, because it's critical work, and I feel that it's a missing piece. It's a missed opportunity.
And I think anybody listening right now, what I want you to understand, and somebody that has done this work and has designed internal buildings of schools, it's not that expensive. And there's so many ways, because I know there's someone on here that's listening, oh, it's going to take me tens of thousands of dollars to redesign and renovate, and I could be putting that into student learning initiatives or teachers' pockets. It's really not that expensive. And on the next episode that Dr. Jones and I films, I want us to really break down how we can approach the funding of these initiatives so that schools can actually have the confidence to show up more confidently, but then also boldly in approaching this work as well. One of the last questions that I have for you today is, if you had 60 seconds to talk to all school leaders that want to do this work but are on the fence, what would you say to them?
If you are wondering why students aren't coming to school, why teachers are feeling burned out, why parents are skeptical, you can look to your environment. This aspect of school culture is a critical component that you are missing. I would encourage you to just try one simple thing and see the difference that it can make, to show you that you can go deeper and how far you can carry your students, your families, and your staff. Because the school is about the people and the relationships. And one of the most important relationships that we have as human beings is our relationship to space and place. That aspect is not only critical in the homes that we live in, but also in the school buildings that millions and millions of people are going into every day. So I encourage you to just try one simple thing and see what a difference it can make. And that should make you a believer.
Our relationships with place and space. That's it right there. Anybody listening right now, I want you to follow, subscribe, and go prepare yourselves to buy 10 copies of Dr. Jones' book in 2026 when they come out. Thank
Yes.
you so much, Dr. Jones, for being a part of the Contagious Culture podcast. Anybody still listening, like, share, subscribe to this podcast. And before you press pause or before you go on with your day, I want you to ask yourself this one question. What type of culture am I spreading? Culture is in anything and everywhere, and the energy you bring is the culture you create. Make yours worth catching. We'll see you all next episode.